So we are going to continue to talk freestyle here, and today we're going to talk about lower body propulsion and the kick. And so there are four different things that we are going to talk about. One is what tends to actually happen with the kick in terms of the actual skill of it. And then we're going to talk about the three different functions that the kick serves. And that is to, one, help swimmers move forward through the water, create propulsion that moves them forward. The second is to create some propulsion to keep the hips up a little bit. And then the third is to create propulsion to help swimmers shift from side to side to facilitate their rotation. So we'll take a look at all those things. And again, we'll start with what's actually happening with the kick. So when a lot of coaches talk about flutter kick technique, you hear people talk about the kick from the knees or the kick from the hips. And what's actually happening is that swimmers are doing both at different times and in different ways. And so what we're going to take a look at is what is actually happening with the kick and how the down kick is actually pretty different from the up kick. And if swimmers try to focus on kicking from the hips or kicking from the knees, it's probably not going to work out too well. So it's pretty hard to see what's actually happening at speed, but we take a look at it in slower motion. You can see that the knee is going to bend here, the down kick, and the knee is going to come forward, and then there's going to be a kick from the knee there. But watch the kick up, the leg's straight, and then it bends here, but that's because the knee is already coming back forwards. So what's happening is that swimmers are kicking from the hips and the knees. So when they recover the kick right here, you can see that's the end of the kick, and then recovering it, they're pulling the leg up straight. And then the reason it starts to bend is because the leg starts coming back down. And so you can see here, it starts to bend right there, but that's because the knee is starting to drive forward, and so that's coming from the hip. The knee is coming forwards, and then the foot is still traveling up, and so the knee drives forwards. That means the hip's punching the knee forwards, and then the leg snaps back, and the swimmer kicks through the knees. So during the up kick, it's pretty much entirely a straight leg kick from the hips. Then from the down kick, it starts from the hip right there. So the foot's still at the surface of the water, the knee drives forwards, and so the only way that that can happen is the kicks from the hip, and then the leg snaps down and swimmers kick through the knee. So straight leg recovery with the kick, then kick from the hip because the knee starts to move forward, the foot's still up at the surface, and then kicks from the knees and snaps the leg forward. So it's actually pretty different than what you hear people talk about. It's a straight leg recovery and then a whip down, and that's how the kick actually works. And so for some swimmers, they might need to focus a little bit more on kicking with straighter legs because they are kicking entirely from the knees. And then for some swimmers, you might need to tell them to bend their knees a little bit more because they're kicking entirely from their legs. So when it comes to the function of the kick, the obvious one is that it helps swimmers move forward in the water. So what you have here is the foot is going to create a lot of propulsion, and this kicking action gets it facing backwards so that it can kick backwards through that point, especially right there, and that's going to help the swimmer go forwards. And so as much of the surface area that's facing backwards and you kick backwards, that's going to allow swimmers to move forward, and so that's a key aspect of the kick, and that's why swimmers use this strategy, is that it puts them in a position where they can kick backwards with as much surface area as possible, even though the foot itself isn't necessarily set up to be really effective at creating propulsion. And that's why, swimmers don't get a lot of propulsion from their kick relative to their arms. That's also why you tend to see swimmers with big floppy ankles be really effective kickers, because they can get that ankle bent, they can get the foot facing backwards, and they can kick from there, and that's going to be a lot more effective than someone that's got cinder blocks for ankles. So the kick helps swimmers move down the pool by creating propulsion as well. Now, the second thing that the kick can be really effective for is transferring the body from one side to the other and aiding the rotation. So if we watch, back up right here. So watch here, he's going to kick, and then he kicks down, and then that pops that same side hip up, pops the other hip down, and he shifts from side to side. He's going to do the same thing here. Boom, snaps that kick, and that helps him shift from side to side. And so it takes a lot less energy if he can use the recovery of the arm and the opposite leg kick to kind of throw things to the other side than if he was trying to literally muscle his way from side to side. And so it allows for a lot more rhythm, a lot more effective timing, a lot less energy if he can switch from side to side using the kick. So right there, he kicks down and he kicks out to the side a little bit, and that pops the hip over to the other side. Same thing here is pop, and that shifts the body from side to side. And so that's another really important aspect of the kick that can be really effective, is that it's really useful for helping swimmers shift side to side and improve their timing. And that's one of the reasons why swimmers will almost always fall into a 2-beat or a 6-beat kick, because two of those kicks are helping facilitate the side-to-side rotation. And so when you see swimmers that really have no connection between their legs and what their body's doing, they're not doing this well. There is no connection. They're not using their legs to shift from side to side. So we'll take a look at it one more time. It's just kick down, and that pops the hip up and over to the side, and then kick down, and that pops the hip up and over to the side. It can be really effective for helping to establish rhythm and for helping to establish rotation. So last benefit of the kick here is that it can help to keep body position effective and keep body position right at the surface. And so as we talked about, the foot is trying to move water backwards, but it can only do so well for so long, but he still kicks. And so what that's going to do is he's going to kick down. And so if he kicks down, something's going to go up. And so the more swimmers are kicking vigorously, that can help to keep the hips up at the surface a little bit more. And that's going to be effective for maintaining their body position and keeping it up at the surface. From my perspective, it's not something that swimmers necessarily need to focus on trying to do or trying to do well. It tends to happen automatically. And if they're doing any sort of vigorous kicking, it's either going to help them move forwards because they're able to get water moving backwards, or it's going to help them stay up because they're kicking down. Because of the shape of the foot and the anatomy of the leg, there's always going to be a preference to kicking down. And so it's going to pretty much happen naturally. And I don't think it's necessarily something that needs to be focused on from a skill perspective, but it is something that's happening, and it's important to be aware of that. And so at this point, he's pretty much kicking straight down, and that's going to help keep his hips up a little bit, and every little bit can be effective at creating speed. And one of the reasons you tend to see a more vigorous kick in sprinting especially is because when swimmers pull, especially in the front half of the stroke, that actually drives their hips down a little bit, and so the kick has to counteract that. And so if the kick's not counteracting that, the hips are going to drop, and it's going to be harder to execute that pull. And so in this way, the arms and the legs are working together. So as a quick recap, the legs are important because they help to maintain alignment, they help to create propulsion, and they help to maintain rhythm by shifting the body to side. And that's why you see swimmers just completely fall apart when the legs go, is because they lose all these functions. And it's not so much that the legs are creating so much propulsion, but that they're doing all these other things, and the stroke can really fall apart when the legs aren't there. And when working with swimmers to improve their kick, remember, it's not just coming from the knees, it's not just coming from the hips, it's coming from both at different parts of the stroke. So it's the timing of the hip and knee actions that are ultimately going to result in a great kick. And what swimmers need to do a good job of is pulling the leg up straight, letting it snap back down, and then whipping the foot to follow through. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding of the kick, how to do it, and the role that it plays in freestyle. If swimmers can improve these qualities, they can improve their kick, they're going to swim a whole lot faster.